I'm Reverend Phil, and I'm your host for Words of the Prophets. Where are our prophets now? Where are those messages God chooses to communicate divine revelation through? In the past, the Creator has sent prophets like Abraham, Siddhartha, Jesus, Muhammad, and many more. Maybe our higher power has switched tactics since we reinterpret God's words as soon as the Creator's prophets leave us. Could it be that Spirit talks to each one of us individually and we haven't learned to listen? On Words of the Prophets, our modern prophets show us how to find the internal prophet that is the I Am, and we discuss the application of spiritual principles in all aspects of our lives. Love and light, everybody. I'm Reverend Phil, and I'm your host for Words of the Prophets. Today, my guest is Richard Welker. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
Richard is a local artist, and we're going to be featuring his art. While we're talking, it's going to be flashing, and then we're going to get into some specific pieces and talk about them as well. Richard is a mandala artist, and incredible work. And we're going to talk about what is a mandala and everything, so you'll know it's more than just what they do with sand in a Tibetan monastery. Anyway, today's prophetic topic is the soul's magnificence. This phrase can be found in the opening paragraph of the homepage on Richard's site, and that'll be flashing on the screen as well. The statement reads as follows: "This site is dedicated to the transformational power of healing images, mandalas, visionary art, and sacred geometry. Its purpose is to help remind us of the soul's magnificence and our own divine identity as love." So with that as our format structure, how did you come to do this work? I mean, start wherever you feel is relevant, say as much as you think is relevant, but I mean, from my understanding, this hasn't been a lifelong endeavor. This is kind of recent.
Yeah, it started probably in 2006 or somewhere around in there. I had gone swimming in Hawaii with dolphins, and concurrently was interested in crop circles and tried to draw a few. And after the swimming with dolphins, I got even more interested in it and tried to draw the geometry that was inherent in the crop circles that I was finding. And that in itself was hard enough to do and got me sort of going in that area. But what really took off for me was that I had a healing crisis in 2008, at the end of 2008. And it was an utterly profound, dark night of the soul. And for me, part of what happened was I needed to find some evidence that there was a loving divine intelligence that I could make sense of order from, because there was so much chaos going into what was happening to me. So I began to draw mandalas more and more frequently, and there was just this explosion of art that came out of me. And as I began to heal, more and more of it came out. And by 2010, I was doing quite a few of them, and many of which you will see, like that one on the screen, for example, is called Unity of Life. And that is something that I began to perceive, is that these states of mind that can appear so negative and even pathological in our society are actually healing crisis, or can be. And in my case, that was certainly what happened. So,
well, let's back up. Were you an artist before you started trying to draw crop circles?
No, I was a contractor for years, a carpenter. I had no training in art whatsoever, and I basically taught myself how to do this. So, and this is all watercolor too. So I used pen and ink and or pencil and drafting tools, simple straight edge and a compass. to do these things with.
So you're drawing on some kind of drawing background,
Yeah,
so to speak.
on a watercolor paper. Yeah.
Interesting. And the fascination with crop circles, where did that come from?
I don't really know. It just the geometry of it was so incredible. It was another, I guess you could say it was, for me, evidence that there is a greater intelligence happening out there that is so incredible and so beautiful and so hopeful. And it says something about a much bigger story that humanity may need to know about, but isn't quite yet prepared to tell itself.
Define sacred geometry. You use that phrase in your opening paragraph.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It's geometry that is like the pattern of life. For example, the golden mean or the golden spiral, which goes like this on an ever-ending, is a mathematical formula, but you find it in hurricanes on a huge level, on an even larger level, universes. On a smaller level, pine cones or sunflower seeds, sunflowers, or seashells, the spiral whorl of a seashell, even the way your hair grows. So there's, it's sacred in the sense that it's at the basis, there's a pattern to life. And so that's the sacred geometry you'll see in flowers too. They're often pentagonal or 5-petaled or 6-petaled, the star of life and so forth.
So this, and I'm going to mispronounce his name, Fibonacci? Fibonacci.
Yeah.
That's the basis of this sacred geometry?
No, that's just one discovery. I think he lived in the 13th or 14th century, and he discovered the mathematical sequence that when graphed out on a piece of paper will produce this utterly wonderful spiral.
But these spirals were, in your understanding, being utilized in art prior to that?
I guess so. It's not just spirals. It's how you can form the basic polygons from a triangle to a square, all generated to flower figures, pentagons, octagons, hexagrams, everything can all be generated by the simple use of a compass and a straight edge. Just knowing where to put points based on the circle. And that's like ancient sacred geometry training, from Euclid and Pythagoras.
Okay, so this is the artistic aspect of Richard. Where did the spiritual come in? What was your background? Were you religious, spiritual, practitioner, searcher, all of the above?
Right. Well, I was raised a fundamentalist Mormon, and of course then I was, how would you say, inculcated with a particular view of God, right? Of this, what runs the show. And but that God wasn't exactly, that view of God, I should say, that image that I was holding, when the healing crisis came up, that view of God no longer worked for me. And I had to find another way of looking at things. I'd always been interested in spiritual things, and I'd even been in a New Age spiritual community at one point for quite a long time. So I guess you could say that I was just looking for a new view, a new image of a God or a divine intelligence, if you will, that is loving, is not vengeful, is not filled with damnation and all of that, but much the opposite, is filled. I mean, the name of the game is redemption. The name of the game is love, and that we're that That was what I was looking for, and that is what these images that begin to come through seem to indicate. They were like proof positive that there was something greater outside the box of my own mind that may exist.
Excuse me.
And that's beyond religion, by the way.
Do you feel like talking about this dark night, what it was all about for you?
It was like, it was like a changing of the gods, those momentous time in history, which are very seldom when the view or the image that a society holds about the divine intelligence that exists no longer holds water. It becomes corrupted somehow. It no longer defines for the people who they are and why they're there and what they're supposed to be doing. And that was happening to me personally. So when you have this momentous happening, when the story that you're telling yourself or the story that's being told to you no longer works, it no longer serves, when that happens, that's an enormous thing to happen because it's the foundation of so much of what you do and how you define yourself. It's all about identity. And when your identity as a people or an individual gets shaken to the core, then that's a potent thing to happen. And so a new story has to be told. And so I had to tell myself a new story. It's like a myth. A myth is not just a fiction. A myth is a story that has real import and defines for a people and an individual their meaning and their relationship to the cosmos and why they're here. And our myth, our collective myth right now, is one based on materialism and a 400-year-old scientific paradigm and a 2,000-year-old Judeo-Christian paradigm. And when that story is no longer serving, or when it becomes corrupted in some way, when it's an insult to the spiritual bird that's inside you, then that's a ripe time for visionaries to come forward, heroes to come forward. It always has happened, and it will happen again. It's happening now. And so this is the time when artists come forward, heroes come forward, song and dance comes forward, all endeavoring to tell a new story that really does say for the people and for the individuals who they are and why they are here and what's their reason, what's their purpose. Like
You a
that.
fan of Joseph Campbell?
Yeah, I am.
I feel like I'm Bill Moyers to Joseph Campbell here.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the mandala. How do you define that? That name, that phrase?
Mandala comes from the Sanskrit. It means circle. And it implies as above, so below. It implies the vastness of things, but it also implies the inner. It can mean the self in psychological terms. And when psychologists use it, such as Carl Jung, who had his own book filled with mandalas. The Red Book has tons of them in there. He often used them to get snapshots of his own inner psyche. And that is also a way that I use them too. Mandalas can be very therapeutic. I call them healing images because they help to heal me, not because they'll heal you necessarily. But mandalas are also, in a way, visionary because they touch onto that place. I mean, the function of art, high art, in any way, must be to bring in the divine order in some fashion. And we're not talking religion here. We're not talking about Catholicism or Islam or any other Buddhism or any other particular view or image. I mean, everyone can have their own image. We're talking about whatever it is that informs those images. And mandalas seem to be the language of the soul as opposed to the language of the ego, which helps to make that connection.
So which came first, the chicken or the egg? for you? Were you aware of the mandala?
No.
And then, so you just had inspiration to start creating this artwork and found out, oh, this is a mandala.
Yeah, that came afterwards.
So you had no background in
No.
any of that?
I had been aware of them, certainly, you know, and crop circles are mandala shaped very often. And in the spiritual community I was in, I was exposed to mandalas, but I never paid them much mind, to tell you the truth, except as a focusing aid, like the yantra, you know, in Buddhist practice. But in terms of actually going in and learning about them and then drawing them from that, no.
So these images just started pouring out of you.
Right.
How did that feel at the beginning?
Well, it felt very therapeutic for me because, and natural. And I didn't want to stop. I was astounded that such things would be coming out of me, and I kept wanting to do more and more and more of them.
Was the whole image coming out of you, or just
No.
part of it, and you had to sit there and meditate on it? How did that work?
Well, sometimes a part would come in a dream. Sometimes a part would come on a journey, a physical journey, like one of the images I remember very specifically, walking through the hills in Australia and coming upon this tree, and it was an ancient tree, and it had all these diamond shapes on the bark. It's called a grass tree. And it inspired me immediately to want to put that pattern into the painting. But I didn't get the whole picture by any means. I would just get an idea, a seed idea, and out of that first dot of nothing that's on the center of the paper, out of that would come more, and the hands would do the rest, and that would be it.
So it was like a form of automatic writing. It was just a form of automatic drawing and painting.
I guess so. You could say it like that. But
And the colors came along with that automatic.
yeah, I would just often jump to the first thing that came in my mind, and most of the time it would work. Sometimes it wouldn't, but most of the time. And then, of course, I did teach myself how to draw some of the basic polygons, such as how to draw squares or how to draw triangles and how to make them very exact, you know, or how to make a pentagon or a star or something like that, you know, so that I could put them on the paper in a way that was pleasing.
And do you now do them structurally or just freehand?
No, I do. I still use sometimes I do freehand, and more so now as I begin to put pictures of animals or creatures or something else in the mandala.
So how has this evolved? I mean, it sounds like you got a healing. So now it's more than just a healing, and now it's an ongoing journey.
It's an ongoing process, yes. It evolved from very rudimentary, crude even, drawings to much more complex. And I've been influenced by Aboriginal artists who use dots a lot in their paintings, although I spontaneously started to do dots as a way of, I don't know why, but it just makes the painting scintillate a little bit more. And I'm doing that more and more as I'm learning how to put dots within dots and dots upon dots and so forth, and how to weave them into the way that I do the mandala to begin with.
Is there a ongoing story from one mandala to the next for you?
It's all the same story.
Okay, what is that story?
It's all about telling a new story. And it's all about the fact that we as human beings have a soul. And that soul is incredibly beautiful. And that soul is a reflection of some divine spark that informs us. And that we are connected to that, and that we are connected to everything, and that we are love, and that we are loved. And that if we will begin to tune into that It's going to make war obsolete. It's going to make all the problems that we have completely solvable, and that's as simple as I can get.
I like that. You know, and we're flashing Richard's website on the screen, and I strongly recommend for all of you, check it out. There are 44, 45 paintings, something like that. One of the hardest things I've had to do in connection with television is to whittle down this body of work into a manageable size that we can cover here. They were incredible. They are beautiful. Go check them out. If my memory serves me, one of the things that I don't remember seeing is dark colors. All your mandalas are vibrant.
Yeah.
So that's that love, that's that hope, that's that message you're trying to get across with them. It's not this dark stuff, and you know, so the dark night of the soul produces, when we come out the other side, the light.
That's the incredible part, because some of these were done under the most incredibly, I mean, I was completely depressed. I was completely overwhelmed by what was happening to me. And then, boom, out of that comes this. People would look and say, well, whatever it is that you're going through, there must be something going. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know if I was going to make it.
So I guess the question I want to ask, and then we'll get into these drawings, the mandalas. Do you have a supporting spiritual practice, or is this the sum of your spiritual practice, just to get down there and do this work?
No, it's not the sum. I meditate, and I love to go into nature. This is what I guess you could call is my contribution to original creation, my original creation. You know, it's unique to me in the particular, but it's not unique at all in that almost universally people make mandalas. So that's why one of the reasons, for example, that I'm doing this class, that I teach a class every Monday night, which we're on our last one this week, to show some of the rudiments of making geometrics so that others can make their own expression of mandalas. And it's incredible what people are producing already within 5-6 weeks.
I will attest to that. How I met Richard is actually my wife was doing chakra drawings. And she's done 3 of the 7 chakras, I think. And then I've got 2 of them on my website. And then she heard about your class. And she says, I got to go take that class. And she's produced some. You know, she's not gonna like me saying this on the air. She's a perfectionist, and she looks at these things and it's like, no, this is off, this is off, this, and I look at them and just, wow. And you're right. I mean, she's like 5 weeks plus what was it, 6 weeks before that. I mean, 11 weeks. The things that she is producing is just unbelievable. But this is about you. This is not a. So okay, bring it back to you. Contact information. They can contact you next time you have a class. You'll let them know.
Yeah.
Excellent. So let's get into these mandalas. The first one we have on the list is called Aboriginal Healing, and that should be flashing on the screen very shortly. So this is, you want to talk about the images? I mean, to me, when I first saw this, it was like, this is not a typical mandala.
Yeah, it's not.
I mean,
this was one of the later ones. In fact, last 3 months this one was done, and this was as a result of an experience I had in Australia. We went out to a fracking pad, which fracking, for those who don't know, is this incredibly destructive technology used to drill down into the ground and through the shale and down beneath the water table to get very difficult to get trapped gas, either in coal seams or other beds, sediment beds. And so I met this Aboriginal guy out there. His name was Waidu. And
is he in this drawing?
Yeah, he's in this drawing.
Which one? Or is he all of them?
He's the, he's represented generically. There's in the center of that ring, there are two individuals. One is light and one is dark, and it represents the 40,000-year-old Aboriginal culture meeting the Anglo culture, they're meeting in a ring. And in Australia, they have what's called the boreal ring, the initiation ring. So this is a ring of awareness that when there's a meeting, there's something happens, and that happening raises the consciousness. And out of that consciousness comes these four spokes, and the four spokes represent seed pods of people who are getting together now and who are beginning to notice things that are happening in the world. And so they're forming around whatever patterns they are comfortable with. And Waidu told us, he says, you have to be aware of what the animals are saying about what's happening in our world, because they have a stake in it too. And that's represented by the blue kookaburra up in the left-hand corner there. And the other three individuals are male, but they represent a new male. Not the male that has power over as his prime directive, but has protector energy as their prime directive. So, and then the serpent, which is in much of my work since I went through what I went through, represents crisis, which means danger on the one hand and opportunity on the other, according to the Tao, you know. So that's some of the symbolism that comes in after I actually draw this stuff.
So when you're drawing this, you don't have these thoughts in mind. This stuff just flows, coming from that divine source.
It's connected, and I don't know how.
And then afterwards
I can ascribe meaning to it,
yes.
And I can see the meaning, and I know that that's kind of what I was thinking, but nothing that clear at all, believe me.
So it's like a meditative state that you go into when you do these.
Yeah, kind of. It's hard to describe.
How long did that one take you?
Oh, weeks. I don't know. I've never sat down and figured out, but it took weeks.
Do you work one at a time, or do you work a few of them simultaneously?
One at a time.
Okay. So the next one, End of the Fifth Sun. Now my knowledge of the fifth sun is it's Aztec, the stone of the fifth sun. Is that where this is coming from?
Not exactly.
Okay.
This probably should have been entitled End of a Paradigm, or End of an Age, or End of a Way of Thought. That's what it means. It means that this was done at exactly the time that the 2012 happened, and the end of the Mayan calendar, that period of time when we passed from one whole system that had been developing for the last 26,000 years, and now we're stepping into a new dimension in thought and in perception and in paradigm. That is a shared collective belief system. So this represented that passage.
And the four spokes are the four prior suns?
No, those are the four directions,
okay.
I guess you could say. That I have less conceptual about the details. I can only tell you that mandala was definitely formed in honor of that passing of this great cycle, what they call the great cycle, and in presage to what's commonly been termed the great turning.
Beautiful. Okay, so the next one is interconnection, number 3.
Yeah, interconnection once again refers to the fact that everything is connected, and that the dawning awareness is that all things are connected, and that when we collectively begin to give that truth a life in us, then things will change.
So you have this circle in the middle.
Yeah.
With a figure in it?
Yeah.
What does that represent?
I don't know. It represents
Okay.
it represents the focal point. I mean, I didn't sit down and say these 5 spokes here are going to mean something. I've never really thought about it. The fact that there are 5 is the pentagon, the sacred number. But in terms of what that particular one has to do with this, it all fits together as a whole to say what I think it says, which was the interlocking gears. That was the thing I was focusing on. You'll see all kinds of spokes or gears, interlocking with each other. That's time, that's place, that's everything. And that's life, all interconnected. We cannot separate ourselves one from the other, no matter where you go in that painting.
So that's the same bird in the lower left?
That sometimes what will happen is an animal will come in the middle of a painting into my life. And in this particular case, this raven, I was walking along, this raven came down and just went right over my head. And I found their nest not far from where we lived. And so from thereafter, we had this ongoing communication, And so when that happens, when an animal makes a presence known, I often put them into the painting because I assume they're trying to tell me something about what? Because everything's interconnected.
In their interconnectivity, all this overlap, I mean, there's a feeling of chaos almost.
Yeah.
And that's intentional.
Yeah, there is order in the chaos.
Okay.
That is one of the prime themes that runs throughout all my work, is order in the chaos. Because I experience that so profoundly, and if all we have to do is look outside and see chaos everywhere, well, where's the order that is in back of all of that? Because if we just focus on the chaos, you get lost.
Understood. Next one is Antidote to Despair.
That came at the end of, I think, 2010, I believe. It was the last in what I called the Australia series, after having come back from Australia. And I was still feeling kind of depressed, and I wanted to make a painting that in some way suggested an antidote to that feeling of darkness that still hung on me like a cloud. And so this is what this painting represents.
The light at the center spreading outward.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
your center, I take it? Again, that's just flowed.
The center.
The center.
Whatever that is.
Okay. I also get the feeling, in a sense, it's almost like a lotus.
Yeah, it utilizes that very much, right.
Okay. I love some of these titles. Next one is Doorway to Self.
Now that one was based on a crop circle that is a little bit different, but it has the step pattern that goes into it. There was a crop circle that was similar to that, but this is actually a spiral. If you follow it, it spirals into the center in squares. And it was one of the first times I put a lot of dots in with the painting, and it kind of shimmers a little bit. But Doorway to Self is that entry point into not the S-E-L-F, small self,
But the bigger
but
self.
the capital S-E-L-F, bigger self. One that's not informed by ego so much. Ego is not, we're not saying that's bad, but the needs of the ego are fame, fortune, wealth, and all that kind of thing, recognition. Whereas the needs of the soul, which is where the bigger self comes in, which is outside the box, outside of our brain, this ticker here, that I try to address that with that doorway, going in and moving towards the self.
So we start out at the outer edges and work our way inward.
Right.
Which is our
And that's
basic journey.
right, and that's a very mandala-like process.
Beautiful, but in a square.
Yeah, but there's a circle around it.
Yes. Fascinating. Okay, so Cave of Brahman is the next one.
Cave of Brahman refers to, well, Brahman is the Hindu god, you know, the Hindu creator. And Cave of Brahman is the place within that is inviolable. It is adamantine. It is consciousness itself. The seed of consciousness, the source of consciousness.
And when did this happen? Where did...
I think that's 2000 and... It could be 2009, 2010, I can't remember.
Is it a reflection of before or after the healing?
No, it's during.
During the
Definitely
healing.
during. All of these will be during at this point, no matter from here on out.
Okay.
This process is not something that's a done deal. You know, I mean, some people like Christ have an experience and they are, boom. You know, it takes them so far down the road that they could never go back. And the experience I had is not of that kind. It's enough to give you a flavor, but you have to work at it. I have to work at it, you know. So
Constantly.
I will constantly be working at this the days of my life to honor these titles and to honor this process. And to see everyone as myself is not an easy thing to do.
Yes. But that's what we're here to find out, the oneness.
Right.
Okay, so the next one has a fascinating title, Disintegration.
Disintegration is one of the first stages that one experiences when one's identity has been completely shaken and there's a collapse inside. As every person in recovery will tell you, you got to hit bottom first, right? And so disintegration is what takes place when the identity that's built around whoever you think you are collapses. And disintegration is not bad. It's actually the most essential piece of the puzzle, because without that you can't heal.
You don't rebuild.
You can't rebuild. There's nothing you have. And in the shamanic tradition, the future shaman to be is taken down into the underworld, and he is put in a pot or dismembered, or horrible tortures take place, maybe for long periods of time. Some shamans have reported up to 21 years of illness. It's called the shamanic illness, in which they are completely undone. And no one wants to do this process. I mean, least of all me. But you don't have a choice when it happens to you. So
Yeah.
that's what this represents.
And those outer circles, those little, what do they represent? I mean, I see the circles, but it almost looks like there's barriers upon barriers to the core.
These things come out in some way, and they're primitive. I don't know what they mean,
Okay.
to tell you the truth, but they do have the ability to create emotion in others when they see them. So all taken all together, they have an effect. And whatever that effect is, that's what they mean.
Next one is divine intelligence.
Yeah. Divine intelligence is a very special one to me because it is on a spiral, number one. And it has almost mystical writing, but it's not really. I mean, I just made it up. So it's not mystical writing, but it looks like a pictorial language, but it's in my own thought processes, in all the colors. It represents the totality of consciousness, and that it's divine is is what is informing us, is what is at the back of who we are, is what I was looking for, is the evidence that I needed to make order out of the chaos. So that's
And
what this mandala means.
the pattern as we're going through this is what I'm seeing. The center is always the brightest. Is that accidental until?
Most of the
intended?
time it is bright, that is true, but sometimes I have deliberately put in much darker colors, and that sometimes works also. We'll see if we have an example here, I'm not sure.
Okay. The next one up is Earth Karma.
Yeah, Earth Karma,
That's chaotic.
yeah. A lot of the commentary that my art, that I want to focus on, because this is where I feel the greatest pain, is in what's happening to our natural world. It's not right, and it's not in our overall pattern to keep abusing the earth without destroying ourselves. So I want to say something about that because it hurts inside me, and this is the way I deal with that. And so Earth Karma represent that individual holding up his hand twisted in a knot, represents stop, represents we can't keep going forward like this. And the flower in the left-hand corner represents the beauty that we're destroying. And on the right-hand side, I've never been able to reproduce this feeling before, but that almost Islamic pattern that you'll see on tiles and in great architecture and stuff. That just appeared. And I think that it represents the beauty of what our civilization can accomplish. And of course, the star is a very powerful figure in itself. So I don't know. Earth Karma came out of that sense that chaos was happening on the earth, and that that there are consequences to continuing to abuse her.
Beautiful. And we followed that with gratitude.
Gratitude comes from 4, 5. Well, you'll see the pentagon in there represented by the turtle, which is formed out of hexagons, but in the center is a pentagon. And so we have 5 spokes coming off of there, and around the outside of the circle are, what do you call them, petroglyphs that come from right down here in La Cienega that I got off of the rocks years ago. And just as I was getting ready to do this painting, up comes this sheet of paper falls out where I had drawn these. And so I gave them color and put them in. And the 3 rings there have the cross-hatching that the Aboriginal art does. And so I put it all together, and that's what came out. It was gratitude.
Gratitude for all the
gratitude
diversity.
For the universe, for what we have, for our life, and for all that has come before, our ancestors, the petroglyphs. These were hundreds of, if not thousands of years old, and so they represent a common sight that we share.
And we go to Inner Earth is the next one.
Yeah, again, the core of the earth is very hot and very alive and very, they say it's molten iron, yeah? So this represents the sacredness of inner earth, but not just the physical inner earth, but our inner earth is where our grounding comes from, and our feeling of being centered and being placed on this earth for a purpose.
And the beauty of art is it's in the interpretation. So what I'm getting from these things are maybe unintentional, but the what was that name of that one again? The doorway to self.
Yeah.
The squares.
Yeah.
And this one, both of them had that kind of labyrinth feel to it.
Uh-huh.
This one is circular labyrinth,
Yeah.
you know, but the other one was a square labyrinth, but it's like that journey, which the labyrinth was to get to the center, was the pilgrimage, so to speak.
That's right. That's right.
And so, like, we enter, you know, we're on the lower left-hand side, and it just looks like, you know, how do I circumnavigate this? It looks like there's 3, 4 somethings in there making the journey, you know?
Right. Right.
But that's just my interpretation.
Right.
Feel free to use it if it works.
Yeah.
The next one is Land of the Original People.
This one came out of an experience in Australia again. My daughter lives there, so I visited her twice now. And this was after the first journey. And the Aboriginal people there, well, I should preface, art, if it functions well, according to Jose Argelis, you know, it's supposed to show numinosity. It's supposed to reflect the divine in the sense of it being healing, in the sense that it's Aboriginal, he said. And the Aboriginal people there do not like to be called Aboriginals. They say that we're originals. We're the
Yes.
original people, they say. So this was in honor of their land and their contribution to this world, which they have inspired me greatly and continue to do so. So Land of the Original People, that's what this is.
And our next one is called Root.
Root represents the core of our being, that our roots go inward and they go outward, that they're multidimensional. They're not just physical, they're energetic, and they go every way, every dimension, up, down, every side, inward, and that the little circles around there that are connected one to another represent the communication that takes place among sentient beings.
I've noticed there's a variety of backdrops to the center mandala. Can you shed some light on that, so to speak? How does that come about? Is that also just totally inspirational?
It happens. It just happens. I can't say that I planned it. I don't. In fact, the name of the game for me is to not plan it too much.
I hear you.
If I get a seed image, maybe I got the tree image there, and that was all I could started with. But eventually, now that snake thing that's connected, it has no head, again, has that quality in it. The snake represents DNA, you know, the entwined helix, you know. The snake represents vitality, kundalini. So it's a very potent symbol, and I'm fascinated with it. And my most recent painting that I'm still working on now has one in it, you know. So that's,
you know, that's, I mean, I guess one of the things I was talking about, because I know we'll move on in a second, is some of your backgrounds go right through the whole thing.
oh yeah,
And some of them create that frame image.
Yeah.
And I mean,
some of that's a function of using transparent colors, and some of it's a function of using opaque colors. Transparent colors are colors that when you lay them on the paper, you can almost see through them. They're very clear. And others are very dark in terms of not allowing light to penetrate through. They're called opaque colors. They're much thicker.
let's do one more, then I got to make, you got an announcement to make, then we can come back and we'll finish up on as many more as we can. So the next one is Divine Intervention.
Yeah.
And that is magnificent. That is the Fabriacci, what's his name? Fibonacci.
Fibonacci. Yeah.
Yes.
That's now that came out of a meditation. What is happening in our world? How do we view what's happening to us? And I got the image of the spiral, which I had no idea how to do. I mean the sinkhole there, that whirlpool. I had no idea how to do that, and so I don't know. That's what came out when it finally gelled. It all came together like that, and it shows the recycling of huge things. Not just. I mean, our earthly desires get recycled. Our whole systems of thought. There's symbols in there of the Judeo-Christian paradigm, of Buddhism, of Islamic, all of those systems of thought get recycled and renewed, and so that's what that painting represented to me, was that it's like that Shelley poem, I guess, where the guy's in the middle of the desert and he sees this statue and it's over on its side, and on its base it says, I am Ozymandias, King of Kings, look at me and weep, basically, because I'm the greatest, and there he is, just the statue is left and there's nothing around. And the irony of that is the hubris that we take on about what we do is not lost in that painting there. And at the center of it, it implies that maybe there will be a recycling and a renewal come out the other end.
And for me, my organization, Church of the One God, where I have the 6 basic religious symbols on the card, there's only one God, and we've got a variety of different paths to get there. And that's what I see in this, the distinct paths spiraling down. To me, the spiral down is to the center.
Right.
And all these paths represented are spiraling down, and at the core is where I'm going to meet my Creator. Not out here, not through this ritual, but that ritual can get me there if I really honor it and live to it.
That's it.
Okay, we got a couple of minutes. You have a couple of quick announcements to make.
Just that I will be showing this weekend at the Santa Fe Society of Artists. They show behind the First National Bank. It's
in the parking lot.
In the parking lot off the plaza.
And you're going to be there pretty regularly?
I won't be there for the rest of August, but then starting last weekend in August, I will be there, and through September and October.
And you have the originals, you have giclées, you have cards.
Yep.
So the whole works.
Yep.
Wonderful stuff. I mean, even just drop by, tell Richard you saw the show, and just honor the work, because it is so beautiful. It's fantastic. Go to this website. I mean, there's almost 3 times as many as we're going to get to review here today. It's amazing. I want to make a couple of quick announcements, then we'll come back and try to get a couple more paintings in. First off, you hear this from me every week, and I never will stop saying it. This is public access. You are the public. We'd love to hear from you. You like stuff, you don't like stuff, let me know. Is there something that you want to have specifically addressed? Let me know. Maybe there's a show you want to do. Let me know. I'm also a counselor. I do spiritual counseling. If there's any problems in your life that you think getting more in touch with spirit would help you resolve, I'd be happy to help you. Don't let money become an issue. I work on a donation basis. That's enough announcements. We got a few minutes left. Let's try to get 1 or 2 more in. I love this one. Releasing the old identity. I mean, the chaos to the, I mean, you interpret it. This is your drug. I shouldn't be interpreting it for you.
Yeah, this was a departure for me in some ways. It was a new figure. The one in the center is based on a crop circle, and certainly the man's face was a departure for me. It represents primitive man in us. Releasing the old identity is that time in your life when the identity that you hold no longer serves and it is being stripped from you and you have to give it up. And that's what this painting represents. And yeah, it's dark out there.
And I don't know if this was intentional in the sequencing or not, but the next one is called Spiritual Emergence. And that is one of my favorites. I use this as my desktop. It's gorgeous. But anyway.
Spiritual emergence, I was interested in spiritual emergence as a term because it comes up in the context of spiritual emergency, which is what I had, which is a rapid, chaotic, transformational, psychological transformation that is completely out of hand. But it leads to a place of an awareness of the unity of life. Spiritual emergence is more slow. It takes place over a longer period of time, so you remain much more stable with it. And I did this painting in Hawaii when things were, in some ways, more stable. And yet they were in this middle of the Pacific Ocean, which is where...
That's the blue?
That's the blue of the Pacific Ocean. The colors there are very different, so you paint with the colors where you are sometimes. But it's on a volcano, right? And so those are volcanic colors also.
And is that a tree of life in the center?
I don't really know.
Okay.
I can't really say, but you'll notice that the eye in the center is what we call the Vesica Pisces, which is the intersection of two circles. And it forms this eye when you superimpose two circles one upon another. It's called Vesica Pisces, and that's a very, very primordial sacred geometry.
Okay. I wish we had more time to do more of these.
Yeah.
Richard, thank you so much for sharing with us this whole process, and we'll just flash in the last couple of them as we go out of here. I thank you so much. Just keep on doing this great stuff. We are, as a culture, as a civilization, a better place for this art, man. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank you all for tuning in. The lesson, that part of the lesson, when Richard talked about the dark night of the soul and referred to Carl Jung, we did a show here a couple of years ago on the Red Book, and it was that same lesson. It's like, we could have these crises, and then what do we do with them? Do we allow them to crush us? Do we become defeated and give up? Or do we use them to start to change the views of ourselves and how we relate to life? So it's time to go. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next week. Live in love and light. Blessings to you all. I'm Reverend Phil, and I've been your host for Words of the Prophets. Thank you for tuning in. Please join me again next week, same time, same channel, for more Words of the Prophets.